I've spoken to filmmakers before who've crafted films together from huge masses of archive. Like I think of Kevin MacDonald making Life in a Day over the last year.
Yeah, but he had 25 people watching it for him. I had just a brilliant research person, Miriam, who's here tonight. And I was like a junkie for those DVDs at the weekend. If I didn't get 20 DVDs, I was in cold turkey land. I was messed up. Well, you have to see it all, even if you fast forward it or rewind it to get the bits you missed. You can't delegate that kind of shit to people. You have to, feel every frame of it to be the judge of what you leave out. You can't have some 25 researchers telling you this is good or bad. You've got to have a kind of warmth. The archive has to speak to you. And I had such a brilliant archivist on this film that I was like surfeiting like Henry VIII from beginning to end.
What I was going to ask there was, what I've sensed before from people making that kind of film is that there has to be a process of pain before you reach the pleasure, the pain of wading through the archive, not really knowing what you're making, and the pleasure only comes when the archive starts to speak to you. You start to get a rhythm of editing it. The ideas start to emerge. Does that ring true at all?
Yeah, it does. At the beginning, you're so overloaded with choices. You do feel if someone says make a film about London, you want to make it as inclusive as you can, and you suddenly get this horrible feeling it's only going to be your version of it, and then that becomes a strength that you realise the only way to tell this story is out of your personal. I'm from London. I was born and bred in London, and most of the films I've made have been about London, trying to make sense of who I am and what city I live in. But when, faced with this task of making a film about London, you need to feel every frame and every corner of what I think it was an amazing job that Miriam did, bringing this huge panorama of everything in. And you've got to get addicted to it, and then you've got to find a way out of it in a way to just try and make some path through it. And I've left so many beautiful things out of this film. I can't tell you, but that's the process of trying to make a path that means something to you, and hopefully that connects to other people. And in doing that, you need a lot of huge support from. I had a great creative team on this film. I have a cameraman who I think is a genius, called Steve Organ, who's here, I think, and I had a partner called George, who is really a soulmate to me in understanding this way of making films. I had the most brilliant editor, Caroline Richards, who's here. Without those people, this film wouldn't exist, because it's so much to go through, and you have to kind of sift everything through, what people you trust feel. It's not just you on your own doing this. I think that should be very clear. I think this film only exists because of the Olympic moment as well, bizarrely. I think we've had an amazing Olympics. I think the best thing of all is to see Mo Farah and people, from every part of the world who've become part of our country, proving they can be part of Britain and part of London. And I think the film is very timely in that sense, because it is about, you can only be a Londoner if you become a Londoner. And
But what role, if any, did the Olympics have in the birth of the film? Did the Olympics create an opportunity? It's a very, very small part of your story, although I think it's the fact that we're watching this film during a period of self-reflection in terms of the city, during a time at which images of our city are being projected out to the rest of the world, feels right, feels very timely, as you say. But did the Olympics create a space within which you were able to make this film. And you were saying to me just before we came on that you feel that films about London, or being given the chance to make a film about London, only really comes along, you know, almost once in a generation. You said Patrick Keeler's London was probably the last great one. Do you think the Olympics created that space?
Yeah, I think the Olympics was it brought the BFI and the BBC and the people who've really made this film happen, you know, the people who really supported it with the money you need to make a kind of film like this, that made it happen. But I think the Olympics have delivered more than we thought they would, you know, in the sense of showing how we have become this incredible world city. You know, I think we are really proud tonight sitting here, not just because of the 100 years we've been through, but because of the last 2 weeks, from Danny Boyle's opening ceremony. You know, this wasn't a Bullingdon Club Olympics. It was Olympics from comprehensive schools. It was Olympics from every community that is part of Britain now. And, you know, if this film is part of that, I'm very proud, because I think, you know, our nation is built from everywhere. You know, it's a complete palimpsest, you know, negative of our empire. We should be the global city because we raped the rest of the world for 250 years, and they will want to become a part of that and make us better. And, you know, this film is part of that process, showing the power of this city, the pioneering spirit of London. Sorry, I'm leaning down into this. Do I need to?
No, you don't. No, I think it'll catch you anyway.
Okay. That's better. So I think we are a pioneer city. I think we're breaking rules every morning, every night. And I think the rest of the world needs to watch us and learn from us and, you know, take it further.
But I think one of the great things you do with the film is balance. I mean, I've seen films based on archive or collections of archive which trade in and provoke nostalgia, and this is not a film that does that at all. Well, then the other approach would be for it to be a film which is just about the now, about London as the ultimate modern metropolis, not looking back either. I think you balance a sense of mourning for what's lost and a sense of celebration for what we have now, without there being an end point. 2012 is just the point at which you've made the film, and I imagine ending the film was probably one of the hardest things to do. How did you create that balance between not being nostalgic but looking back and celebrating the modern without it feeling purely of the now?
Well, it's a funny thing, because when I was a kid in the 50s, I was brought up by a father who was run down by that racist guy, Colin Jordan, you know, in an alleyway. He came back one night, you know, with his hip smashed. And he was inspirational to me, because he said everyone in the world is equal. And he said, you know, if we can accept them in London, we can make a huger thing of everything that we have. That was a huge inspiration. You know, I have it at the end. My father died this year. But he was in a world that was very racist when I grew up. He was a beacon of non-racism. And, you know, in a way, this film is a tribute to him, because he turned me on to not being scared of racism and stand up for that idea of welcoming every culture. And I think the change in the city that I've seen from when I was a kid to now is just a magical thing. And I just think it's going to go beyond, you know, it's like winning all these medals at this Olympics. The way London's going, it's going to be out there in front as a world city, because it's creating a brew of creativity and collision of ideas that's never been seen before. You know, people talk about Athens in 400 BC. I think London could be like that. I mean, I've seen cities that have already begun that journey, like Rio, which is great that they've got the next Olympics, but I think London is a very special, tolerant, welcoming place. And that, you know, I just feel to show in 2 hours, the journey from global empire to where we are now is just a celebration of the power of this city, really.
Did you feel that more or less having made the film? You say you see London, and you see the film as celebrating London as a tolerant, welcoming and diverse place. Did you feel that more having made it, having explored all this footage, having put together, having thought of it? Did it change your feelings about the city at all?
Well, I really got a feeling about the suburbs, that when I was a kid, the suburbs were like dormitories of death. You just didn't want to go there. You just want to be in Soho with Roland Kirk and Jimi Hendrix, and you didn't want to go anywhere beyond Hampstead was like the limit. Now I think it's all happening in Upton Park, man, in Southall, in Ealing. The more the wealth takes over the middle, the more the energy is in the periphery.
Could you tell us a bit about the role you wanted music to have in the film? Because you were talking there about the collision of ideas in the film, and it feels that you allow, when you have this chronological backbone running through the film from the late 1800s through to now, but it seems that the music allows you to make collisions between now and then, to jump out of the period. So even though you're slowly moving through that time, it's the music which allows you to make those parallels, which upends us, really, stops us in any way feeling comfortable in a particular period, or allows us to wallow in what we may think we know about a particular period.
Well, when I was a kid in mid-60s London, I had this huge energy from the Rolling Stones and particularly the Kinks, that we could be very specific about where we come from and could transmute the blues and transmute that whole African-American, the triangle of slavery. We could make that very apparent in our own city in a kind of Blakean way. I think those bands of the 60s were like William Blake, and the Small Faces included, who are the East End band of that, the London. There are 4 great bands of London at that time. And they're like the psycho joke, where Will Self and Ian Sinclair come from, is the Kinks and the Small Faces and the Who. And they understood that you could transmute messages from Africa via America back from England to be incredibly human, enlightening forces. I used to hear those bands when I was just a kid, and they taught me I didn't have to believe in what I was told at school or what my parents told me. I believed in thinking for yourself through that music, which I think the punk thing carried on. I think the music of our city has been a great weapon for understanding everything about the world, and music is an incredible thing to cut to. You just strip free of any top-down kind of BBC TV narration that tells you what to think. You should open it up with the music and the voices of the people. I don't understand this idea of writing an essay and then illustrating it. It's